The Monkey Trials, the Darwin Theory, and a LaFollette Man with a Tail. East Tennessee in the 1920s. This is Cleaning Up History, where my goal is preservation of headstones and cemeteries and telling forgotten stories of the past. I'm going to start this story by talking about the Monkey Trials. It begins with a man named George Rapollier, who was superintendent of Cumberland Coal, which was in Dayton, Tennessee. And you see, Dayton was going through somewhat of an economic depression, and Rapollier saw the need to draw people into Dayton, Tennessee. And the Butler Act had recently passed in the state of Tennessee, which prohibited teachers from teaching the Darwin theory in any public schools. And Rapollier saw an ad in a newspaper, and he came up with an idea. See, there was a civil liberties group who was looking for someone to challenge the Butler Act. And Rapollier just happened to have a very close friend who was a teacher. Now, in his mind, it wasn't about the law. It was about having the trial of the century, having this big trial, and bringing people into Dayton, Tennessee. And so he talked to his friend, John Scopes, who was a teacher, but in actuality, he was a football coach and occasionally substituted. But John agreed to plead guilty to teaching Darwin's theory of evolution in order to have this court trial. And it was a complete circus, literally. This trial, people brought apes, chimpanzees. They were selling food and selling ice because it was in June or July and it was very, very hot outside. So there were vendors there selling toys and circus performers, and the monkeys were all involved in this court hearing in Dayton, Tennessee. It became widely known as the Monkey Trial, but it was the state of Tennessee versus John Scopes. So they made a complete circus out of this, and the men involved in the actual case, they were serious about this. One attorney was very serious about keeping the Butler Act in place for religious purposes. The other attorney was dead set on the right for teachers to have freedom of speech and to teach how they see fit. And they were serious about it. But the people of Dayton, they were just enjoying all of the people coming in. Dayton was so full, all the boarding houses were full. Actually, one of the hardware shops in town was turned into a place for all of the reporters to sleep at night. And there were many, many newspaper reporters. And this was actually the first trial that was ever broadcast live. It was the trial of the century, as they called it. And ultimately, Scopes, the Butler Act was a law at the time, and since he did plead guilty to teaching the Darwin theory of evolution, he was found guilty of this. The judge discredited all of the expert religious witnesses and all of the scientific witnesses trying to prove their point, because the case was about Scopes. It wasn't about the Butler Act. And come to find out, Scopes never actually even taught the Darwin theory of evolution. Like I said, he was just a football coach and substituted occasionally, and he said if he did actually teach this theory, he didn't remember it, or he just briefly touched on it. But nevertheless, this was a big deal for Dayton, a very big deal. And apparently they still have some reenactments on the Monkey Trial, which was the trial of the century. But what's this got to do with Campbell County, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Campbell County, a man named J.D. or Dillard Williams, he wanted in on all this publicity too. And he was trying to draw attention to Campbell County. And he filed a notarized affidavit stating that he had the missing link to prove Darwin's theory of evolution. And that was a hermit that lived in LaFollette who had a tail. And this would ultimately prove that we did evolve from monkeys, because some of us still have tails, I suppose. And this man, it said that he lived about 18 miles away from LaFollette. And once you drove those 18 miles, you had to park and walk the remainder of the way to his mountain cabin. And the pursuit of this hermit who had a tail, it took around 3 or 4 days. And they finally did find this man. He was around 60 years old at the time. And once they got to talking to him, he said that he did used to have a tail, but he fell and broke it off, and it almost killed him when that happened, that he was bedridden for quite some time. But once they examined his tail, it wasn't long enough to be considered a tail. So Williams decided that this wasn't the man that he had seen to start with, that it was a man in a different county. And he was requesting funding for him to pursue finding this man that he saw with a 4 to 6 foot long tail, who was supposedly in Jefferson County. I'm not sure how that he got a man in LaFollette confused with a man in Jefferson County. I don't want to be the person to start spreading false genealogies. I believe I did find the man who supposedly had a tail. The articles only refer to him as Uncle Jim, but I'm not going to mention his name on here because, like I said, I'm not 100% sure that this is the same Jim, and I don't want to spread false genealogies for everyone to document for years to come. But the monkey trials in Ray County, Tennessee, they lasted a while, and they were a big deal. And just as Rappleyea wished, it brought crowds of people in. It brought revenue in. All the local stores stocked up and were able to sell their goods. All the boarding houses were full. People were paying to stay at various other businesses, such as hardware stores and things like that. It brought revenue to the city of Dayton and to Ray County, Tennessee. I'm sharing with you photos of various grave sites of the people involved. The Butler Act remained a Tennessee law until 1967. And it was actually a Campbell Countyan who got that law taken off the books. A teacher in Jacksboro was fired for teaching Darwin's theory of evolution. And even though he was later offered his job back, he fought this law, and it was taken off the books in 1967. The teacher's name was Gary Scott in Jacksboro, Tennessee. So I'm going to continue to share the various articles and things that I found, and so you guys can see all that. But that's the story that I have on the monkey trials, Darwin's theory, and the LaFollette man with a tail. As always, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all your likes, comments, views, and shares. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.